Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, I wanted to go over some attributes and traits to recognize if an avoidant is more likely done with a relationship, maybe entirely. A lot of avoidant individuals, they may leave relationships prior to actually genuinely wanting to leave due to being triggered, perhaps because they are denying their own feelings. And so, a lot of times when avoidants leave, it's not necessarily something that is concrete. However, there are some traits that I have noticed when I'm practicing that might lean in the direction where the avoidant individual is actually truly done for good, or where it's more solidified, to which the relationship will need a lot more effort to recultivate and readjust back to where it could have been. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. However, understand this is not a one size fits all. Take everything said with a grain of salt. So let's go ahead and jump right in. The very first one is something that they have stated repeatedly. So typically that means they stated directly to you multiple times, and that's that they left because they were frustrated with a particular behavior of yours. Okay, this means that it was not something that was caused because they deactivated, right? This is a genuine reason anybody can leave, regardless of attachment style. And particularly with avoidant individuals, if they directly state it to you repeatedly, this is likely a sign that it's very frustrating to them, because most avoidant individuals, if they're battling something, a lot of times they're not going to say something that's going to create a potential for conflict, just because so many of them are so conflict adverse. And so by prioritizing mentioning this to you many times, it is likely something that is truly bothering them, to which they would bring it to your perspective, or the prominence for your perspective in general. And often why a lot of individuals may miss this, the partner of the avoidant, is because the avoidant individual may not state it in such an anxious or urgent way. They may just state it very bluntly, directly. They may even get frustrated about it, but the frustration can be confusing because it might look like something they're deactivating about. And so the partner does not realize this is something serious because of how much the avoidant's other behaviors may cloud this. So I'm going to give an example. Let's say an avoidant individual might say, I don't know, you complain a lot about your friends, and it really makes me feel like you're not good with setting boundaries. Let's say that's something they continuously bring up. That doesn't necessarily mean that they don't love you or they don't like you. And so it's hard for you to take it as this is something that's really bothering them. However, if they state something like, this is really bothering me, like I'm on the edge, I'm not happy anymore, that would probably click to a partner of an avoidant, because that may be how you state it. But that's not how avoidants communicate. Remember, we always mention there's a difference between how you communicate. They may state it very directly, maybe not very urgently, maybe not very overly anxious, and so you might not recognize that this is still a sign of frustration. I hope that makes sense. The next one is, instead of shutting down or getting frustrated during disagreements, they respond with indifference. So they're not emotionally invested in the actual disagreement. That because when an avoidant gets frustrated, or even when they shut down, or when they need space from the argument, it's because they're listening to it. There is something about that argument that is valid, that they're emotionally invested in. If they are not responding in any sort of way where there's an emotional investment, this might mean that the relationship in of itself is not emotionally investing the way the avoidant probably feels attuned to it, where they are actually feeling very indifferent. They may not feel like the relationship, maybe it no longer serves what they originally wanted it to, as in emotionally for them. They may not be happy any longer, to which they're responding with, okay, sure, or whatever you want to say, or if that works for you, or are we done here, whatever works. Like they're just trying to shut the argument off without actually, and you'll see this consistently, right? Without actually communicating in any sort of way. Even if it's maladaptive, there's barely any communication at all. Now, some avoidants do this if the argument has been prolonged for a while, but in general, if you're seeing this with every single disagreement, any type of disagreement at all, this might be something that shows the avoidant individual is no longer feeling any sort of emotional investment. This one can be tricky because if this is the only trait that you're seeing, then probably they're not done. They're trying to respond differently to disagreements. But if this is along with all of the other traits, that might be something. But this alone, I would not say signifies necessarily that the avoidant individual is checked out. The next one is they used to talk about the future, including you, even vaguely. Even saying like, yeah, I'll send you a picture of my car next week. Or yeah, we can do this together. That is still including you in their future plans. Even if they don't follow through, even if they're not necessarily doing that right away, that's still you in their future. If now every single future instant has nothing to do with you, of course, this is a sign that they may have emotionally checked out. And whether they recognize it or not, they are not necessarily seeing you fit in their future any longer. They don't talk about the future. Now, some avoidant individuals talk very loose about the future, and they may have never included you. That is different. If they never have, they just need more time. That actually means that they're slowly still getting to get comfortable with you. That's different. But if they used to talk about the future with you, especially if it was really obvious, like they would say, yeah, we'll do that beach trip, or yes, I'll show you this picture, or yeah, in 2 years, I don't mind doing something like that. That may be how they used to talk, which is now they're not doing that at all. This is much more of a highlight to which they may feel actually emotionally done with the relationship, okay? The next one is they told you directly during the end of the relationship. So this could be when the relationship already ended. A lot of these you can look back on and see if this is how the relationship ended. If you're looking back and seeing, is my partner going to return or are they not going to return? This one is a really obvious one where when you look back on the end of the relationship, you remember them saying things like, I don't know if this is working anymore, or I can't do this anymore, or we have to stop doing this. If you remember them saying those types of things, you might actually recognize, or maybe they're saying this now, this means that the relationship is at a critical point where it needs to be readjusted as soon as possible, and you guys need to hear each other out more, because this is a common instant, regardless of attachment style, that the person feels very frustrated. Now, the only attachment style where this is not always the case is if you're an anxious or fearful leaning anxious. Fearful leaning anxious or anxious individuals, they sometimes say this where they're not done yet, but they're getting close to being done. Avoidant individuals, more likely, if they're saying stuff like this, it's not necessarily an emotional response. It's a genuine logical response. And so if you're hearing this, this is usually a very large sign that the avoidant individual is feeling like the relationship is over. The next one is they no longer defend themselves or explain themselves to you. A lot of avoidant individuals are very, very, very defensive. Interesting enough, that is a sign that they're emotionally invested in the relationship, because they wouldn't need to defend themselves against you if they didn't care about your opinion. Now, if they are no longer being defensive, if they're not being defensive, but they're being positive, that's fine, right? But if they're no longer defending or explaining themselves and they're letting you have your negative perspectives of them, that's a huge sign they don't care. So for an example, let's just say you're afraid they're cheating on you, and now they're not fighting with you about that. Even if they say you're so paranoid, you're always jealous, whatever it is, that's still a sign that they're trying to say, hey, I'm not cheating on you, right? That's actually what they're saying, whether it's positive or negative communication. They're still saying, I'm not doing that to you. But if they no longer are defending themselves, they're just like, yeah, whatever. Or, I mean, if that's what you think, or it is what it is, this is a sign that they have checked out. They no longer believe in the relationship. And the very last one, this is something that I can see in sessions start occurring more as I realize the relationship is heading more probably towards divorce or breakup rather than reconciling or connecting, is that you'll see the individual be actually very bored or annoyed with you in most of the time you spend together. Not all the time, but most of the time, right? Avoidant individuals, when they feel very happy in a relationship, you might see them actually be a little bit more lighthearted or more open or appreciative towards you. Even if it's not verbal, you can see it in their expression. If you're always seeing them be very irritable, annoyed, frustrated, physically distant, this relationship is at the point where it's a little strained, and you want to fix that. You want to correct that, because you don't want this to be an issue persisting, because then it will end up being where the relationship in of itself is no longer comfortable for both of you, okay? So those are some of the reasons that avoidant individuals might be done with the relationship. Let's quickly summarize and then we can wrap this up. The first one is that when they left or they decided to leave because they were frustrated with a behavior of yours, or that's what they keep reintroducing, bringing up. The next one is instead of shutting down or getting frustrated, they respond with indifference. The third one is they talk about the future without you when prior they used to talk about it with you. The fourth one is that they mention things like, I don't know if this is working anymore. I don't know if I can do this. The fifth one is they no longer defend or explain themselves. And the sixth one is that they are often bored or annoyed when you guys are spending time together. I hope this video was helpful. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.